Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
History is often shaped by those who record it, and as a result, certain narratives dominate while others are erased, overlooked, or dismissed. When we think of Vikings, the image that comes to mind is typically that of fair-haired, blue-eyed Scandinavian warriors, fearsome in battle and skilled in seafaring. Yet, history is far more complex than the stereotypes allow. Could it be that among these legendary Norsemen were African explorers, traders, or even warriors? The possibility of Black Vikings, a fusion of two seemingly distant worlds, challenges what we think we know about early medieval history. Were there Africans who set foot in the cold, rugged landscapes of Scandinavia? If so, how did they get there, and what roles did they play in Viking society? This untold story brings to light the evidence of African interactions with the Norse and the hidden legacies of Black Vikings in history. The idea of African presence in Scandinavia is not as far-fetched as it may seem. The ancient world was deeply interconnected through trade routes that spanned continents. Long before the Viking Age, c. 793 to 1066 CE, African and European civilizations had already been in contact. The Roman Empire, which at its height controlled vast portions of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, facilitated a web of trade and migration that connected African societies with Northern Europe. One of the most significant North African influences in early Europe came through the Moors, a broad term historically used to describe Muslim inhabitants of North Africa, Spain, and parts of the Mediterranean. The Moors had extensive knowledge of navigation, astronomy, and geography, skills that may have influenced European seafarers, including the Vikings. Evidence from Arab and Moorish records suggests that Black African traders and warriors traveled beyond the Mediterranean and into northern Europe. The Vikings were more than just raiders. They were prolific traders and explorers who ventured as far as the Middle East, North Africa, and even Central Asia. Their trade networks extended along the rivers of Russia, into the Byzantine Empire, and across the Islamic Caliphate. The bustling trade centers of Baghdad and Cairo were familiar to Viking merchants who exchanged furs, slaves, amber, and other goods for silver, spices, and exotic items from Africa and East. Historical sources indicate that Vikings captured and traded people as slaves, thralls, many of whom came from various ethnic backgrounds, including African origins. The presence of African individuals in Viking communities may have begun through these interactions, but not all Africans arrived as captives. Many were traders, sailors, and even mercenaries who traveled willingly, seeking new opportunities in the north. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence supporting the existence of Black Vikings lies in the employment of African and Middle Eastern warriors in European conflicts. The Varangian Guard, an elite unit serving the Byzantine Emperor, included a diverse array of warriors, including Norsemen and Africans. These highly skilled mercenaries often returned to Scandinavia after their service, bringing with them influences from the lands they had visited. The possibility that some African warriors integrated into Norse society is further supported by medieval texts describing dark-skinned individuals in Viking sagas. The 13th century saga of Eirikr the Red mentions a dark-skinned people encountered by the Norse in Vinland, North America, referred to as Skrælings. Some scholars argue that these descriptions could have been influenced by prior encounters with African or Middle Eastern traders. Archaeological discoveries have added weight to the theory of African presence in Viking society. Several Viking-era graves have yielded skeletal remains with distinct African features. One such find, in the English town of York, a major Viking settlement, suggests that individuals of African ancestry lived and died among the Norse. Similarly, isotopic analysis of remains found in Sweden and Denmark has revealed dietary patterns and genetic markers indicative of African origins. Moreover, ancient DNA analysis continues to uncover the complex genetic diversity of early medieval Europeans. Studies have revealed that populations in Scandinavia were far from homogeneous, and there were indeed individuals with traits pointing to ancestry beyond Europe, possibly from North Africa or even sub-Saharan Africa. If Africans did integrate into Viking society, what cultural exchanges might have taken place. The Norse were known for their adaptability, incorporating elements from other civilizations they encountered. African metallurgy, for instance, was highly advanced, and Viking blacksmithing techniques may have been influenced by African innovations. The Vikings also had an extensive knowledge of celestial navigation, an area in which African scholars excelled. Some researchers suggest that certain African spiritual beliefs and storytelling traditions found their way into Norse mythology. The Norse god Odin, often depicted as a wanderer with deep wisdom, bears similarities to African trickster gods such as Anansi, known for their cunning and knowledge. While speculative, these parallels highlight the potential for cultural intermingling. Why is the presence of Black Vikings not widely acknowledged in mainstream history? One reason lies in the way history has been recorded and preserved. Medieval chroniclers often wrote from a Eurocentric perspective, minimizing or ignoring non-European influences. Additionally, the racial ideologies that emerge in later centuries sought to reinforce a rigid narrative of European identity, sidelining the contributions of African and other non-white peoples. Colonial-era historians further contributed to this erasure by shaping Viking history to fit nationalistic and racialized narratives. The idea of Vikings as exclusively white, Nordic warriors served political and ideological purposes, distancing them from the broader historical reality of cultural exchanges and ethnic diversity. The story of Black Vikings remains an enigma, one woven from fragments of historical records, genetic evidence, and the enduring legacies of global migration. While mainstream history may have overlooked their presence, the clues left behind suggest that African individuals played a role in Viking society, whether as traders, warriors, or even members of the Norse elite. The truth is that history is never as simple as it seems. It is a tapestry of interconnected civilizations, shaped by human movement, adaptation, and survival. Uncovering these forgotten narratives is not just an academic pursuit. It is a step toward a more inclusive understanding of history, one that acknowledges the diverse contributions of all peoples. The Vikings were not a monolithic group, but a dynamic and complex society that interacted with the wider world. The possibility of Black Vikings challenges our perceptions and invites us to rethink the untold stories of past.